Walter Reed had always believed that silence was its own kind of companionship. In his small wooden house on the edge of Maplewood Town, silence lingered like an old friend, soft, familiar, and patient. At 78, he had grown used to spending his days alone, watching the world move on through his window, while he sipped lukewarm tea and listened to the creaks of the aging floorboards. It had been 10 years since he retired from the postal service, yet sometimes, when the breeze carried the scent of paper and rain, he still felt as though he should be out there, hand on the strap of his old leather mailbag, walking the same winding streets he once knew by heart. For nearly 5 decades, Walter had been Maplewood's postman. People used to say, if Walter delivers it, it must be important, and he held that compliment close. Not because he needed praise, he was never that kind of man, but because being the postman meant he had a purpose. Every knock on a door, every envelope slipped into a mailbox, reminded him that he was a part of people's lives, even if only in small, quiet ways. But time has a strange way of fading things, even purpose. After Lydia, his wife of 52 years, passed away, the world seemed quieter than it ever had. The laughter in the walls, the warm hum of morning breakfast, the soft chatter in the evenings, all gone. And now, even the memories were beginning to blur around the edges. One cold autumn morning, Walter climbed into the attic to fetch a quilt Lydia had sewn years ago. The attic smelled of dust, pine wood, and forgotten stories, the scent of things that had waited too long. As he lifted a cardboard box, something fell out and landed at his feet with a soft thud. It was an old leather pouch. His breath caught. He recognized it instantly. The undelivered mail bag. Not just any bag, his bag, the one he had lost in 1974 during a heavy storm. He had been convinced it had washed away in the river. Everyone had forgotten about it eventually, including him, but here it was, dust-covered, stiff, and full. He knelt, hands trembling as he opened the metal clasp. Inside were dozens of envelopes, aged, yellowed, and still sealed. Letters meant for people who had waited and never received them. Walter sank onto an old wooden crate, suddenly 20 years younger and 50 years more ashamed. He whispered into the attic's quiet darkness, "Lydia, why didn't you tell me you found it?" There was no answer. Only the soft rustling of old paper that seemed to breathe with memory. He lifted the first envelope, to Samuel Turner. From Michael Turner. Walter closed his eyes. Samuel Turner, the town carpenter, had lived 2 houses down from Walter for half his life. He remembered the man's face, always stern, always tired. He also remembered the day Samuel's son, Michael, left town after a terrible argument, a fight that wiped 10 years of closeness clean off the map. Samuel never talked about Michael again. What would have changed if he had received this letter? Walter's heart tightened. He picked another envelope, to Emily Hart from Margaret Hart. Emily Hart had been a little girl when this letter was written. He remembered her mother, Margaret, a quiet woman with soft eyes, who died far too young. Emily had grown up believing she never received a final message from her mother. And here it was, a message frozen in time. A message Walter was supposed to have delivered. He took a shaky breath, the weight on his chest growing heavier with every letter he touched. Another envelope, to Mayor Collins. From Anonymous. Walter remembered this one too. A rumor had circled the town for years that the mayor had once been in love with someone he never named. He always denied it, but the sadness in his eyes carried a different truth. What secrets lay in that unmarked envelope? Walter swallowed hard. A lifetime of hidden stories sat in his lap, and guilt prickled beneath his skin like icy needles. The next morning, Walter stood at his front door with the old leather bag slung over his shoulder, just like the old days. His knees cracked, his back protested, but his heart felt alive for the first time in years. Maplewood Town had changed. Houses had brighter paint, new families lived in old cottages, and children he once watched grow up had children of their own. But the smell of pine in the wind, the soft hum of the lake, the familiar crunch of gravel, those things stayed. He walked slowly toward Samuel Turner's house. The carpenter's home looked older, windows dull from years of neglect. Samuel himself sat on the porch, carving a small wooden bird. "Morning, Samuel," Walter said softly. Samuel looked up, eyes narrowing. "Walter Reed, haven't seen you in a long while." Walter hesitated. How could he explain something like this? "I found something of yours," he said, handing the old envelope. Samuel took it with rough fingers. When he saw the handwriting, his breath hitched. This is Michael's." Walter watched as Samuel carefully opened the envelope, a single folded page. He read slowly, lips trembling. Tears welled, but did not fall. Samuel was always proud. When he finished, he held the letter to his chest. He wrote this: "After our fight," Samuel whispered, I never knew he tried to reach out. I thought he was gone forever." Walter said nothing. There were no right words. Samuel's voice cracked for the first time in decades. "I pushed him away, Walter. I pushed my own boy away, and he still wrote to me." Walter's eyes softened. "It wasn't your fault. Life can be messy, Samuel." The old carpenter looked up at him and nodded once, the silent kind of thank you that men like him offered when words weren't enough. As Walter walked away, he felt something warm settle in his chest. Maybe he couldn't fix the past, but he could bring peace to it. Later that afternoon, Walter went to Emily Hart's home. Emily was now in her 50s, with silver streaks in her hair and a gentle voice that reminded Walter of her mother. When he handed her the envelope, Emily stared at it for long seconds. "My mother's handwriting," she whispered. She opened it carefully, as though it might break. And when she read the words, tears spilled freely. "She wanted me to know she loved me, that she wasn't leaving me alone." Emily pressed the letter to her heart. "All these years, Walter, I thought she left without saying goodbye." Walter swallowed his guilt and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes things get lost, but they still find their way home." Emily hugged him, something Walter hadn't expected. Thank you for bringing this to me." As the sun began to set, Walter made his way back home, his steps slower, but his spirit lighter. He had 3 more letters in his bag. Each one carried a truth, a secret, a memory, waiting for its rightful place. But for now, the old postman needed to rest. He sat on his porch, watching the last light of day fade into a soft orange. Maplewood Town seemed quieter somehow, as if respecting the secrets he had uncovered. Walter sighed, leaning back in his chair. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose again, a sense of being needed. He looked down at the remaining letters. He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow. I'll deliver the rest tomorrow." As he sat there, wrapped in the cool evening breeze, a sudden wave of emotion washed over him, a soft whisper of loneliness mixed with gratitude, and it reminded him of something he needed to say. If any of you listening feel touched by stories like this, and if you ever wish to support my little world of bedtime tales, my PayPal link is quietly resting in the description below. Even the smallest help keeps me going and helps me create more peaceful moments like this for you. He smiled gently, feeling the weight of the day settle peacefully in his bones. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new truths, new goodbyes, and maybe forgiveness. The next morning came softly, with a thin veil of mist resting over Maplewood Town. Walter Reed stood at his window, watching the world wake up. Birds hopped along the fence. A dog barked in the distance. A neighbor swept her porch slowly, as though trying not to disturb the quiet of dawn. Walter tightened the strap of the old leather mailbag across his chest. 3 letters remained, 3 lives that still needed closure. He stepped outside, breath forming a ghostly puff in the crisp air. The town always looked different in the morning, gentler, almost forgiving. Walter hoped the people he was about to visit would feel that same gentleness when they received the truths he carried. 1. The mayor's secret. Walter's first stop was the old municipal building. Mayor Collins had long since retired, replaced by his much younger niece, But he still spent mornings in the visitor's room, enjoying the warmth and the chatter of people coming and going. Walter found him in his usual spot by the window, reading the newspaper with a pair of thick-rimmed glasses. "Morning, Walter," the mayor said without looking up. "You're out and about early." Walter approached slowly. "I have something for you, Collins." The old mayor lowered his newspaper, puzzled. "Something for me?" Walter handed him the envelope, yellowed, edges frayed, handwriting still crisp. Collins stared at it as though it were a ghost. "This handwriting," he whispered. "It's hers." Walter nodded, but said nothing. This was Collins's moment. With trembling fingers, the mayor opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. Walter saw the old man's eyes flick left to right, reading each word slowly, deliberately. Then a tear slid down his cheek. Collins shut his eyes. "She loved me," he whispered. "She truly loved me, Walter." Walter waited silently. "All my life, I thought she married someone else because she didn't want me. I thought I wasn't enough." He swallowed hard. "But this letter, she wrote it the night before her wedding. She wanted me to know she always loved me, that I was her first choice. But life wasn't that simple." Walter felt a lump in his throat. "I'm sorry it took so long to reach you." Collins folded the letter carefully, reverently. "Walter, this erased 40 years of regret." He reached out, placing a warm hand over Walter's. "You didn't just deliver a letter today, you delivered peace." Walter nodded softly, and with that, the old postman walked away, heart a little heavier, yet strangely lighter, to the widow by the hill. The next letter belonged to Anna Fields, a widow who lived just outside town, near the tall sycamore trees. Walter remembered her well. She used to bake pies for the postal workers every Christmas. Her husband, Thomas, had been a friendly man who died in an accident decades ago. The envelope in Walter's bag was addressed to her from Thomas. Walter knocked on her door. Anna opened it slowly, her gentle eyes lighting up when she saw him. Walter read. What a surprise. He smiled politely. "Morning, Anna. I found something that belongs to you." He handed her the envelope. Anna brought a hand to her mouth, eyes widening. This is Tom's handwriting." "Yes," Walter said quietly. "It was lost many years ago." She invited him inside and sat on her floral-patterned sofa, hands trembling as she opened the envelope. Walter took a seat across from her. Anna began to read aloud softly. "My dear Anna, if you're reading this, it means I've made it safely to my new job site. I want you to know that no matter how far I am, you are my heart." Anna stopped, tears falling freely now. "And if anything ever happens to me, don't let guilt bury your beautiful spirit. You were the greatest gift of my life." Anna pressed the letter to her chest. "Oh, Tom, I didn't know he wrote this. He died before he came back home. I always wondered if he had regrets, if he was scared, if he blamed me for anything." She looked up at Walter, her voice breaking. "This letter, it clears everything." Walter felt his own eyes sting. "Anna, he loved you more than anything, that's clear." She nodded slowly, breathing deeply, almost as if letting go of a weight she had carried far too long. "Thank you, Walter. You brought my husband home to me." Walter left her house with his heart full of sadness, yes, but also warmth. It was strange how delivering old pain could bring new peace. 3. The final letter, Lydia read. Only one envelope remained. Walter stopped walking. His heart began to beat faster, too fast, because the name on the envelope was one he never expected. 2. Lydia Reed, from Caroline Bishop. Walter had to brace himself against a lamppost. Lydia, his Lydia, Caroline Bishop, had been Lydia's closest friend 40 years ago, until they suddenly stopped talking. Lydia always said it was just life that got in the way. But Walter had noticed the quiet sadness in her eyes whenever Caroline's name came up. And now, a letter that never reached her. His hands shook as he turned it over. Should he open it? Should he read something meant for Lydia? Was it even right? But Lydia was gone, and whatever Caroline wrote might hold truths Lydia died without knowing. He slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, written in hurried, messy handwriting. Walter began to read. Lydia, I'm writing this because I don't know how to tell you face to face. I made a mistake, one I regret every day. I never meant to hurt you. You're my closest friend, my sister in every way but blood. The truth is, I was jealous. You had a wonderful husband, a beautiful life, happiness that I never found. And instead of celebrating you, I pulled away. Please forgive me. If you let me, I want things to go back to how they used to be. Caroline. Walter lowered the page slowly. A soft breeze blew across his face, as if Lydia herself were there, reading over his shoulder. For years, Lydia had wondered why her friend drifted away. She had blamed herself, questioned herself, grieved a friendship that once brought her so much joy. And all along, the explanation was sitting inside a lost bag. Walter wiped a tear that slipped down his cheek. I'm sorry, Lydia, he whispered into the quiet street. You deserved this truth in your lifetime. But then he held the letter to his heart. And I'm glad I found it now, so I can finally forgive her for you. It felt like releasing something heavy, a rope tied around his soul since the day Lydia died. He folded the letter neatly and tucked it into his pocket. Some letters didn't need delivering, some needed holding. Just then, a soft voice behind him said, Walter. He turned. It was Clara Jenkins, Lydia's old neighbor. She had seen him from across her garden. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said gently. Walter smiled sadly. I think I've seen a memory. Clara walked over and touched his arm. Whatever it is, Lydia would want you to rest now. Walter nodded. I think you're right. That night, Walter sat on his porch. The old leather bag lay empty beside his rocking chair. Each letter, each secret, each unfinished story had finally found its place. The sky above Maplewood glowed with soft pink and gold tones as the sun dipped below the horizon. Walter closed his eyes. He imagined Lydia sitting beside him, warm, comforting, familiar. I did it, sweetheart, he whispered. I finished my route. In the distance, a wind chime rang softly, Lydia's wind chime. It almost felt like an answer. He took a deep breath, letting the last bits of weight slip off his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, his heart felt light, truly light. As the night settled in, Walter leaned forward and spoke softly, almost as if speaking to his listeners sitting beside him. And to everyone listening, if these stories touch your heart, if they bring you peace during lonely nights, you can always support my little storytelling journey. My PayPal link is in the description below. Every bit helps me keep these stories alive, not just for me, but for you. He leaned back, the cool night breeze brushing his face. Walter Reed, the old postman of Maplewood, had delivered his final letter, not to the town, not to the past, but to his own heart.